Go. Good afternoon. Are we ready? And you can hear me from this? Okay, good. Good afternoon. My name is Jenny Lear of the League of Women Voters. Welcome to this Candidates Forum for the Mountain View City Council, sponsored by the Los Altos Mountain View League of Women Voters and Google. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization for women and men. It encourages informed and active participation in government and influences public policy through education and advocacy. We do not support or oppose any political party or any candidate. We provide online information for voters on our local League of Women Voters of Los Altos Mountain View website and at smartvoter.org. Please note that this forum will be video recorded by Google and will be posted on the League website I just mentioned and on smartvoter.org. The League of Women Voters of California has taken stands on some of the ballot propositions. To review these, please go to ca.lwv.org. Turning to our candidates forum, there are 9 candidates vying for 3 seats. They have drawn numbers to determine their seating order and will be introducing themselves. As we begin, I'd like to briefly go over the format of our session. The following ground rules will be observed during the forum. For the audience, the questions to the candidates must be written on cards provided by the League, and the volunteers are circling to hand you them, or you may come to this table to write your question or hand in your card if someone hasn't picked it up. There are 2 people over there screening the questions only for similarities. We do have limited time, as you know, and we try to do the best to reach the most amount of topics. In the interest of time, and so that we can keep this a nonpartisan environment, we ask that there be no applause or other demonstrations of support or opposition to the candidates or their positions. At the end of the forum, we will thank them all with our applause. To the candidates, the candidate responses should pertain to the question at hand. We will be taking written questions throughout the forum from the audience, as you heard, and we will select questions to cover as wide a range of issues as possible. As moderator, I will enforce firm time limits. We have a timer light here that will indicate when a candidate needs to stop. They get a 45-second go, they get a 15-second yellow light, and then a red. We will begin with a 1-minute opening statement from each candidate, and they have drawn numbers for their order of seating and speaking. We will then present the questions we have collected from the audience and from Dory. Candidates will be called on in a predetermined order for each question and will have up to 1 minute each to respond. In an effort to cover as many questions as possible, we will ask a question of 3 candidates, then go to another question for the next 3 candidates. This will become clear. Not every candidate will have the opportunity to answer every question up here, but we hope that you will take the time to talk one-on-one to the candidates at the reception after the forum, which takes place right in this room. And it's very, very nice, so don't leave. Following the question period, we will have a closing statement from each candidate of up to 1 minute. Candidates will speak in the reverse order of their opening statements. Let us begin opening statements of 1 minute each with Mr. Unangst.
Okay, does this work? I guess it does. Hello, I'm Greg Unangst. My wife and I have lived on West Middlefield Road here in Mountain View for 16 years. Since retiring from Lockheed in 2011, I have focused my energies on civic endeavors to include the Board of Directors for Stevens Creek Trail, the Restoration Advisory Board for Moffett Federal Field, and as chairman of the city's Bike Pedestrian Advisory Committee. I was compelled to run for City Council by the crisis conditions of traffic congestion, the soaring housing prices, the growing gap between the rich and the low-income working families, and especially the diminishing life prospects for our younger middle-class generation here in Mountain View. I'm the only candidate not taking any donations from anyone, particularly developers, labor unions, landlord associations, property management organizations, etc. I'll work to make our city and our region a better place to live and work for all, and I humbly offer Mountain View my extensive experience, my world-class education, and my down-to-earth common sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Showalter.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks so much for coming. I've been a 30-year resident in Mountain View, very active in community service. I'm a registered civil engineer that specializes in water resources management. I was termed out of the EPC after serving 9 years. I served as both the chair and the vice chair during the dot-com boom and bust. And I spearheaded the design of the Wistman Station neighborhood. For the last 13 years, I've worked full-time at the Santa Clara Valley Water District on environmental protection and endangered species protection. I've also been a board member of the local League of Women Voters and the Santa Clara Valley League of Conservation Voters. For me, protecting the environment, it's not just something I do in my spare time, it's my life's work. I have a bachelor's in geology and history from Mount Holyoke College and a master's in geotechnical engineering from leadership from UC Berkeley, and I attended Leadership Mountain View as many of my fine colleagues here. And I have top priorities of housing and traffic control. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Mr. Siegel.
Hi, I'm Lenny Siegel. I want to thank you all for coming out, particularly since there's a ball game about to start. I started a group called the Campaign for Balanced Mountain View in March to deal with the jobs, housing imbalance. And some council members and some people who are now candidates said, well, this is a regional problem. We can't solve it in Mountain View. And our response for our group has been, well, we ought to start in Mountain View. We need to build housing in North Bayshore. We need to limit office construction. But beyond that, it really is a regional problem. And I want to talk about what happened in '96 when the community of Mountain View blocked the air cargo proposal for Moffett Field. As a result of that, NASA, Mountain View, and Sunnyvale formed a community advisory commission that came up with some ideas for public-private partnerships at Moffett Field. And those have been implemented, and they've been implemented successfully. And I think to take on the jobs housing imbalance, we should create a body that includes the cities that are jobs heavy, Google, Facebook, Apple, and community groups to solve our problems together regionally. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Salem.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming out and listening to us and our ideas for a better Mountain View. My name is Mercedes Salem, and I'm running for City Council because I want the residents of Mountain View to thrive, and that's becoming harder to do regardless of your income level, from the very top incomes all the way down the ladder. And I believe that it's our responsibility as a city to service our residents, to provide them pathways to home ownership, to provide more housing. We certainly do have a jobs housing imbalance, and we need to create more housing opportunities for people that already live here and work here. And we need to create better services for our residents so they can have a better quality of life. We have traffic issues, especially on Shoreline Boulevard, and we need to deal with our traffic problems with traffic solutions. And we have housing issues all over the city, and we need to deal with them with housing solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Capriles.
Thank you for having me here. I've missed you for the last 2 years. I ran in 2012 for the council. I'm a resident of Mountain View for over 45 years, and I have a very strong attachment to the community and the way we're building our community. And yes, we do have a housing problem and transportation problem and an additional water conservation problem as well. And we need to attack all of these together, and I think that we can do that. My volunteer services in the community, both when my children were growing and through Leadership Mountain View, and I continue to be involved through the YMCA and other activities. So I'm committed to look at these problems together and to have our public-private partnerships and to make sure that our solutions are the best for all of us, because we welcome all of our community, both corporate and our residents, and we want to be able to create the community that we want. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Kamei.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon. So today does mark our 8th candidate forum, and over that time I've been talking about how I'm a third-generation Mountain View resident. My grandparents, my father's parents, met as rose cutters here in the Mayfield Mall area. And my father, who's in the audience with us today, was actually born at Heart Mountain, an internment camp. He met and married my mother, a Chinese and Puerto Rican American from a low-income family in New York City. And together, they took over the family-run and operated business here in Mountain View and transitioned it to Morgan Hill. So I split my time growing up between the two cities. And Mountain View has been a part of my entire life. When my grandparents both fell ill, I moved back here after graduate school in public policy, and my roots are here. Mixing my public sector background as well as being the vice chair of the city's Environmental Planning Commission, I'm thinking about the city's growth, affordability, economic development, and overall quality of life here. It's important that we have a balanced approach to our future, and I appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Matichak.
I'm Lisa Matichak. Many of us here have lived in Mountain View for a long time, and some of us are newer to the city and pretty much everything in between. But one thing we all have in common is a vision for what Mountain View can be. There are so many great things about this city, and there are a few things we need to work on, but we have a great foundation upon which to build. The city is in really good financial condition, and it's the envy of many. We have great businesses, such as Google, in our city. And we have wonderful parks and open space, especially Shoreline Park. What a gem. But we absolutely do need a few more parks and open space. We also have a lot of residential units in the pipeline, and we can add more in places where the infrastructure already exists. We've got quite a few public transportation systems in the works, or solutions, improvements in the works, but we need to explore more. And we're working on safer routes for bicyclists and pedestrians alike. We're probably not going to have time to cover all of those, but I'm looking forward to this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Rosenberg.
Thank you. Thank you to the League of Women Voters and Google. About 13 years ago, I became very involved in leadership positions in groups that work for the betterment of our city, including the Human Relations Commission, the Downtown Committee, the Chamber of Commerce, and of course the old Mountain View Neighborhood Association. And there are 6 other Mountain View-based organizations on my website. I am described by those who I've worked with as being unifying, collaborative, inclusive, and a style of leadership that I intend to bring to council. I'm also known for creating the Civility Roundtable discussion series. That is an award-winning event that brings together Mountain View residents to talk about the most challenging and complex issues that we collectively face. And that's why improving the dialogue between the residents of the city and the city itself is a campaign priority of mine, along with housing, land use, and traffic. And I'm happy and honored to have received the endorsement of the Palo Alto Daily Post last week, and they have joined over 75 other community leaders in endorsing my campaign, and I hope you see things similarly and vote for Ken.
Thank you. And Mr. Neal.
Hi, I'm Jim Neal, and I earned my MBA a few months ago from Notre Dame Dana Muir University while also working full-time, commuting 4 hours a day, and going to almost every single city council and EPC meeting. So I'm very familiar with the busy schedule that council keeps, and I've got no doubt that I'll be able to continue to do that if I'm elected to the council. I'm also an 8-year resident of Mountain View, and I actually worked for Palm Computing before it became one of Google's primary buildings, and I also worked for NASA Lockheed Martin, so I've been in this area quite a long time. Like many of you, I'm a renter. So in the last 2 years, I understand what it's been like for you to have your rents go up by 10, 15, or even 20%. And I think that I and some of the other candidates have some very good solutions to help with that. And I'm looking forward to hearing your questions tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, all of you. Our first question for candidates 1, 2, and 3 is the 2012 general plan estimates that Mountain View will add 22,000 jobs and 9,000 housing units from 2009 to 2030. Do you think those numbers are accurate? Where do you expect these workers to live? And would you amend the general plan? Mr. Unangst.
So no, I don't think those numbers are accurate. I think the job estimate is low already. I think we may be approaching units, housing space in the pipeline that may exceed that. Obviously, the 9,000 houses that you mentioned are totally inadequate. Like you say, where are these people going to live? We need to work on getting that number up and increasing the number of housing units that are made available, particularly for middle and lower middle income families that are really struggling to stay in the city. We need to maintain our economic diversity in the city and our age diversity. The way the trajectory we're on now, we're going to be an older, gentrified city in a matter of 10 or 15 years if we keep going the way we are. We need to make space for our lower middle income people and our younger people. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Showalter.
I'd just kind of like to build on what Greg said. Yes, I think that we need to amend the general plan. I was involved in working on the general plan about 3 years ago, and we tried to get housing included in the North Bay Shore, and as you know, that wasn't successful. So one of the things that I will certainly work on if I'm elected is getting the general plan amended so that we can begin to study building a new community out here in the North Bay Shore. Sadly, the number of houses that's existed in the general plan isn't really high enough, and we need to boost that as well. We can't do that indiscriminately, however. There's going to be a tremendous amount of investigation required to back that up. There's going to be a lot of community dialogue to make sure that it's done properly, and a tremendous amount of environmental investigation. But we have a lot of know-how in this town, and we can do it right. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Siegel.
The numbers are clearly inaccurate. Based on employee reporting, the census reported that Mountain View had 75,000 jobs in 2012. That's at March 12, 2012. And the projection for 2030 was 81,000 jobs. Based on that data, I figure that we have about 91,000 jobs right now. That's 48,000 more jobs than employed residents. So we need to build more housing. North Bay Shore is a place to start because it's a place where we've got the most room for a new neighborhood. We need to build more housing at San Antonio in the Wisman area and south of Bay Shore along what I hope will be a rail line between downtown Mountain View and the Googleplex. So there's a lot we can do, but we have to revise the general plan. Our city council is operating on inertia, and given the explosive change that's going on right here, this is the center of the universe, we have to do something to change the plan to solve our problems.
Thank you very much. Now, candidates 4, 5, and 6, this question is for you. Would more offices in North Bay Shore increase or decrease the demand of housing currently on the market? What about more housing in North Bay Shore, even if expensive?
Well, that's a great question. Of course, more office space will necessitate more housing. We have a jobs housing imbalance, and it's important to recognize that so we can fix it. Now, I don't believe that creating housing in North Bay Shore is going to be the solution to our problem and things are going to get fixed. Absolutely not. There's simply not enough land out here. There are so many other considerations as well, but let's just look at the acres. There's simply not enough acres out here to meet the demand. In our general plan as it stands, we have 3 change areas that are zoned okayed for housing. One is the El Camino Real corridor with 179 acres of land. The other is the San Antonio area with 98 acres and Moffett Gateway with 13 acres for a total of 290 acres of land to build on where existing neighborhoods and services have established themselves, and those are the areas we need to start in. We also have a part of Wisman that's already zoned for housing, and we have to focus there. What we have in this area more than anything is a traffic problem that we must fix.
Thank you very much. Ms. Capriles.
Thank you. I think that we need to take a look at the reality of whether the land here is suitable for the housing out here. And I think that that's extremely important for us to look at. It's 35 feet above sea level, and I think that we are all aware that the landfill that is the regional park right now is a landfill. So I think there is an important point to make in saying it is not a good idea to put housing where there's potential safety hazards. I think as a public servant, you have to look at the reality of putting people in a place where there's a potential for their safety. I think that reducing the amount of housing is certainly a realistic idea that we need to be considering, and I think that it would help us create a better balance. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kamei.
Great, thanks. So on Planning Commission, we've actually approved new housing in the city. We recently approved on El Camino at the Harv's Car Wash site at Miramonte and Shoreline. I met with someone earlier this week who was proposing over 600 units of housing in the Wisman area. We're also talking about additional housing in San Antonio. So I think the need for housing is something I've been hearing on Planning Commission and something I have been supporting and voting for. For the discussion in terms of housing here in North Bayshore, I do know that Google does have 10% of their population as Mountain View residents. But similar to the concerns expressed by my fellow candidates, I'm not sure that it's the best fit right now. My biggest concern is the infrastructure. We are at capacity at Shoreline in terms of vehicular trips during our peak AM time, and services in terms of a grocery store, police, a school. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, questions, candidates 7, 8, and 9 will answer this question, and I want to say that we are going to use the acronym SPUR, which is about suburban urban redevelopment. She says you all know what it is. Okay, well, some of us do. Trust me, it's about regional planning. That's okay. We're there. So SPUR's regional planning director says to get more people on mass transit, we need to upzone the land next to transit hubs for more dense housing and offices. What density would you like to see next to Mountain View's Caltrain and VTA stations? Ms. Matichak.
Yes, so it's kind of hard to come up with a number off in your top of your head because so many factors go into what density is appropriate for different locations. But clearly, in the general plan, we have designated certain areas for higher density, and it is along the transportation corridors. El Camino Real, San Antonio, Wisman, and it makes a whole lot of sense to have more people close to the public transportation. We just need to make sure that public transportation is as attractive as it possibly can be so people are motivated to get out of their vehicles and take public transportation.
Thank you. Mr. Rosenberg.
So I too don't have a number that I would say, but it is entirely appropriate to put your higher density housing next to transit corridors. That's the definition of smart growth. Smart growth means urban, mixed use, transit-oriented housing. So you've got retail perhaps underneath and so forth. The question that I have about transit is that the area where we have the most amount of jobs here doesn't have adequate transit. You have to rely on your buses and your carpooling and so forth to get here, and those brave enough to go by bike and foot. So this area here is a nice change area for the regional problem of transit. In Mountain View, in isolation, we have an issue with last mile between the Caltrain station and the North Bayshore, which I think we can fix as well, probably with your help.
Thank you. Mr. Neal.
So as somebody that takes public transportation or walks almost everywhere 99.9% of the time, I actually disagree with the premise of this statement to begin with. It's got nothing to do with how dense the zoning is as far as getting people on mass transit. The problem is that mass transit is too expensive and is too inefficient. However, dealing with the other part of the statement about what type of zoning we need in those areas, I believe that the zoning and that the buildings that are, the projects that are built there have to be compatible with the areas in which they're placed. So for instance, you're not going to put a 4-story block-long building next to a row of single-story houses. I think that would just be ludicrous. So I think that no matter what the zoning is for it, you still have to take into account the characteristics of the area and preserve the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Question 4 is for candidates 2, 3, and 4. Ms. Showalter, do you think tech companies are good for Mountain View? Do you think non-tech industry residents of Mountain View agree? If not, what can we all do to increase unity in our community?
Well, since I'm married to somebody who works in tech, I have to say, but I actually believe that tech companies are good for Mountain View. I think that we are the hub of the national economy with respect to this, and we're the envy of many, many places. The other part of the question was, how do we welcome these people? Or
if not, what can we all do to increase unity when people believe one way or the other, tech, non-tech?
Well, I think the way we have to increase unity is make sure that everybody is included in the conversation and the community. And the way to do that is to have a really vibrant group of parks and community services and community activities that people take part in. We have some more formal things like the community roundtable, but we also have some very fun things that bring people together.
Thank you. Mr. Siegel.
I think tech companies are historically a mixed blessing. The semiconductor companies that made this place Silicon Valley left a whole lot of toxic substances underground that are under here at this point. Google, LinkedIn, other companies provide a lot of jobs. They also increase traffic. So it's not a question of whether the companies are good or bad, but how we bring those companies and their employees into our community. Now, one of the problems we have with the recent growth is gentrification. A lot of people with money moving in and forcing other people out. Now, the response isn't that we don't welcome the new people. I know that's been the response in San Francisco, but we make sure there's enough housing for everybody so that, you know, as Pat said, we got a lot of older and retired tech workers in Mountain View. So Mountain View isn't hostile to Googlers and other folks. It's a matter of figuring out where everybody's going to be able to drive, where they're going to be able to work, where they're going to be able to go to, their kids are going to be able to go to school. And I think we can do that, and that makes a unified community.
Thank you. Ms. Salem.
Well, I would be a hypocrite if I said that tech was bad for Mountain View. I myself have worked at NASA Ames Research Center and then most recently at Synopsys. I'm the only one of the candidates who has a robust career in technology and science, and also a career in public policy as legislative counsel in the House of Representatives. I benefited greatly from the tech industry. I was able to pay my way through undergrad and college because I worked at companies like Cisco and Fujitsu, and I believe that the tech industry is integral and important to our community. And I was here earlier this week and we're talking about this exact issue. What's required is transparency. There's a little bit of fear going on that, the tech industry is taking over Mountain View, but I don't think that that's what the tech industry's plan is to do. We need to have better communication and transparency between the newer companies and residents and the older companies and residents.
Thank you. We will now take question 5 for candidates 5, 6, and 7. What is your position of having a bridge over Stevens Creek? Ms. Capriles.
I think what we're trying to do, certainly in the North Bayshore plan, is to look at the ease of mobility all around Bayshore and how we can alleviate that transportation problem. And certainly part of that proposal came from another suggestion of, I think the bridge might help to improve that mobility. So I think it's really important for us to take a step back and look at the overall mobility plan and see if that bridge, is that going to really make it easier? Is that really what we need? Or do we need some more entrances and exits from the freeway into the campus? So I would want to take a step back and look and see how that would be incorporated into the overall plan.
Thank you. Ms. Kamei?
Thanks. I'm actually taking a break from Stevens Creek Trail right now. But in terms, I had a little incident, runner-cyclist incident. The city has been looking at a bicycle pedestrian master plan for the entire city. And so it is important to not only think about the discussion of a bridge over Stevens Creek Trail, which I know was discussed by council and ultimately voted down, but talking also about how it's best to get through the city. And I think that also involves talking to our neighboring cities to get that fluidity. So it's talking to Sunnyvale, it's talking to Palo Alto, utilizing the existing resources that we have and trying to expand on that to create the infrastructure, not only for bicycles, but also pedestrians.
Thank you. Ms. Smatacek?
So the bridge. I think it would be really good to know what specifically the goal of the bridge is and to have a better understanding of what it might be doing now and what you might want it for in the future. I think once we have that idea, certainly, it's worth a discussion, but we absolutely need to understand the impact of it from a financial perspective, from an environment perspective, from the general look and feel of this area. But I think it's worth a discussion with the community and others to find out more about it.
Thank you. Mr. Rosenberg? No. No, I'll give you a new one. Thank you. Thank you very much. Question 6 for candidates 8, 9, and 1. Housing issues dominate our concerns, but what are your top 2 priorities outside of housing and transportation?
There's something outside housing and transportation? Thank you for informing me. So actually, that last question leads into this question. So the concept, on my flyer that you see, I have 4 bullet points with respect to my priorities. And of course, housing and traffic is part of it. But the 4th one is really about improving the communication between the residents and the city. And that last question involving the bridge, that's a great example. Housing in the North Bayshore involves more, we need to implement a more robust communication planning system so that people can get involved in these decisions. If any of these things happen, a bridge over the creek, which I do support, or housing in the North Bayshore, which I do support, then people are going to feel a sense of isolation if they're not involved in the decision-making process.
Thank you. We don't know that there are 2 other priorities outside of housing and transportation in your mind. So, Mr. Neal, go for it.
Right. So my top 2 outside of that are, as I said previously, preserving neighborhoods, making sure that the small local stores that have served our communities for years can continue to grow and thrive in the communities that they serve. And also saving the milk pail. That's been a big deal of mine for the last 3 years, ever since the project in the San Antonio Center became a problem for them. I've been doing everything I can, going to city council meetings, going to EPC meetings, writing articles in the Mountain View Voice, speaking out and making sure that we can keep this local treasure, because I think it's one of the best assets that we have in this community. And then as far as the last question about the bridge, that was talked about in this. Don't go to the bridge.
Give me your top 2 priorities beyond housing and transportation.
I think the bridge was a great idea. Thank you.
Okay. My rules were that we answer the question pertaining. All
Okay,
right.
so I'm going to talk about my second two priorities that are on my literature. One is bike pedestrian infrastructure. As the chairman of the Bike Pedestrian Advisory Committee for the city, it's one of my burning goals is to improve the infrastructure in the city. They've made substantial progress in the last year or so, but we're still lagging far behind the demand. I would like to shift our transportation network from a car-centric network to one that's more balanced between cars, bikes, pedestrians, transit, the handicapped, and I guess I lost one somewhere. But the other priority that I'm working on is parks. As somebody mentioned before, the city in general is short of park space. We're very built out, so we need to take advantage of every opportunity we have of acquiring park space. Even small parks are beneficial. And I live right across from a very small park that's just mobbed with little kids during the day. It's great to see that small park being utilized by little kids.
Thank you. Candidates 3, 4, and 5 will answer question 7. In previous forums, all of the candidates have enthusiastically supported biking and making biking safer. Will you do this even when it gets hard, such as when you have to tell your neighbors you will be removing street parking to put in bike lanes? Mr. Siegel.
Well, the first thing that I've been saying about bicycle decision-making is I want to get everybody who's making those decisions out on a bike. Pat and I were on the city-sponsored tour of Shoreline Boulevard and California Street, and Greg was there too. And, you know, no other candidates and only one council member. And people have to see what it's like to be out there bicycling to know what to do. As far as taking parking away from our neighbors, the place where that's a concern is a commercial strip along El Camino. And we have to really look at each strip part of El Camino and decide whether or not those businesses really need street parking. We need better bike safety, bike lanes on El Camino. It's not safe now. But we have to look at each site to make sure that we aren't creating conflicts between bicyclists, business, housing, etc. We can all do it together if we look at it carefully.
Thank you.
So sometimes you have to do the hard thing because that's the right thing to do for the future of the residents and the safety of the residents. And I believe that, regardless of whether it deals with parks, biking, pedestrian lanes, sometimes you have to do the hard thing. And that's why you have to pick a city council who can make good decisions on your behalf. Now, Ellen is a great example of why we need better bike and pedestrian lanes. This shouldn't happen. And, you know, when I heard about it, it was just shocking and awful, and I'm sorry that this happened to you. So, and this was on a trail. So can you just imagine the things that are happening out there on a daily basis on our streets? We definitely need better bike and pedestrian lanes. We need them to be as separate as possible where we can. And I'm totally for buffered bike lanes and separate pedestrian lanes.
Thank you. Ms. Kripelis?
When I think about the bicycle safety, I think about the children who want to get to school and go there safely. And their parents have tried to go together with them to make sure that they are taken care of and they're safe. And I think part of it, it's a very much a give and take. And so if it means giving up a few parking spaces for the safety of the children, right on. I like that. Let's do it. The children are our future, and we have to take care of them. But we also have to take care of us, because we've all found out that we're also very vulnerable with being safe in traffic. And so we're taking a look at all of those opportunities of where we can have those protected bike lanes and where we can really take care of the safety of everybody, no matter what mode of transportation they're taking. Thank you.
Thank you. We will have question 8 now for candidates 6, 7, and 8. Ms. Kamei, in the new higher density developments, should there be public open space, and how would you convince developers to include open space?
So as we change and grow, I really do think it's important that we have open space. As we've been looking at different developments on Planning Commission, we have seen that actually our tree canopy is less than even the city of San Jose, which I think is something that we should work on, and something that we do ask for when we see projects. We ask, what is the public passageway through this development? Will this be open to all Mountain View residents? Will there be, for example, a community room? This might be a great space for a hub. And will these bike racks be available to all people? Will there be benches? What will the project include? And I think pushing for open space would really be great for all Mountain View residents.
Thank you. Ms. Matichak?
There are requirements for open space in general, but most of it is private open space for new developments. And so when it comes to public open space, it is really important because we are trying to build a greater sense of community, places for people to gather, to get to know each other. You do develop a greater sense of community when you know your neighbors. And so it is important to have that public open space, especially in areas where there is greater density. And we have been talking quite a bit. It's my 5th year on the city's Environmental Planning Commission, and I think we've been talking about this for all 5 years. And that is, what trade-offs are we making? And absolutely, you provide some incentives to developers to provide that open space. Maybe it's a little bit more density. Maybe it's a relaxation of a setback requirement. Something to give them a little bit of incentive because it is really important for our sense of community.
Thank you.
There's terrific examples around in Mountain View. Like I'm thinking the Wisman Station area, for example, a very high density neighborhood with lots of open space. When I was out walking the precinct, there was a tremendous amount of activity after work hours of people just taking their children out to the parks and the playgrounds and then interacting with each other. I think the second part of the question is the key. How do you get the developers to do that? Well, you get them, without trying to repeat exactly what she said, by giving them incentives. You have a community goal in mind. Some people call it community benefits. And you say, this is how you do it. Mountain View right now is in an enviable position. People keep thinking the developers are calling the shots. Mountain View is calling the shots, or Mountain View can call the shots going forward because people want to set up shop here. They want to build the buildings. They want to have the apartments and so forth. And so we can have a long list of requirements that we would enjoy for the entire community.
Thank you. Question 9 is for candidates 9, 1, and 2. If elected, will you strongly support and advocate for a minimum wage of $15 by 2018? Mr. Neal.
So I think that the City Council putting the minimum wage to $10.30 an hour recently was a very good first step. However, putting it to $15 or higher per hour by 2018 is a question that really can't be answered at this point because you don't know what the economic conditions are going to be. What if there's another recession? If you put that in place right now to say that we're definitely going to have that by 2018 and there's a problem with the economy, that means that you're condemning a lot of businesses to go out of business. Also, I've talked to a lot of small business owners within Mountain View, and they've all told me the same thing, that when the cost of the minimum wage goes up, there are other costs that are associated with it that they have to pay, things like unemployment insurance and things like that also go up because they're based on the wages that they pay their employees. So, no, I can't commit that to that at this time. All I can say is that when it comes up again, I would give it very careful study, and if it makes sense, then yes, I would do it.
Thank you. You are number 1. If elected, will you strongly support?
Yes, I strongly do support trying to get to $15 by 2018. I do believe the council put that as a goal to try and achieve that. I would try to make that, I won't say mandatory, but definitely use maybe a $1 increment per year And basically, if we do have an economic collapse of some kind, a severe downturn, we can revisit that as we go and maybe not do the next increment. But I think at $15, I don't know how people even survive with $15 in this city. It's a challenge to do that. The rents are going higher, yet the minimum wage hasn't changed that much in the last few years. So $15 an hour is, I don't think, unreasonable if it's gradually stepped up to, as opposed to doing it all at once.
Thank you. Ms. Showalter?
If elected, I certainly will support increasing the minimum wage before 2018 to $15 an hour. I think this is one of the things where the phrase "a rising tide raises all boats" applies. The studies that have been shown indicate that quite the contrary from causing people to lose jobs, it creates jobs because the people who are making more money have more money to spend in the local economy. The other thing I wanted to bring up is that one of the good things that the City Council did, really we should be very proud of, is they passed this by ordinance. They didn't say, oh, we're not going to take responsibility to this, put it to a vote of the voters. They said, okay, let's do it. That means we can raise it or we can lower it by ordinance if the economy would require that. But certainly with the boom economy we have at the moment, it looks like this is an excellent thing to do.
Thank you very much. Question 10 is for candidates 3, 4, and 5. How should the city recreation program...
Last time you started with 3.
Pardon me?
Last time you started with 3.
Oh, you're so great to have up here. Okay, number 4. Thank you.
Well, actually, let me hear the question first.
Okay. Yeah, I was looking forward to that. Thank you. Number 4, 5, and 6. How should the city recreation program adapt to the changing demographics of the city?
This is a great question, and it's something that I'm very passionate about. I believe that the City Parks and Recreation Program is really wonderful, and they do such a great job, and they're passionate about the programs that they provide for the community. But we do have a changing demographic, and we need to tailor our programs more to them. We need to create more child development programs for girls and underrepresented minorities in technology, specifically towards STEM, and make it fun for them and make learning about science, technology, engineering, and mathematics fun and accessible, and we haven't really transitioned to do that. We live in the most technologically innovative place probably in the world, and we still have people that are not able to get great tech jobs right in this community, and we need to make those changes.
Thank you. Ms. Capriles.
Well, one of the things that I'm really, really excited about is on the 14th of November, we'll have our teen center opening up on Escuela, just right across from our senior center. And our former council members have made this happen. And the reason they did is because they recognize that the diversity in our teens and the needs for our underserved community need to be right in the focal point of where our special citizens live. And so we have reached out, and they will have culinary events. They will have a place where teens know how to write their resumes. And so I think the outreach has started, and I think we will continue to do that. I know we are lucky to have a very strong PAL program in the Police Athletic League, and they are offering boxing and different things. So I think we've got a good start, and we'll just continue that.
Thank you. Ms. Kamei?
Hey, thanks. So the City Recreation Department has done a lot in terms of trying to do programming for all ages. So not just youth, but also with our seniors. I know that what we could do is have some more partnerships. So the City Library does some programming that they also do jointly with the Senior Center as well as our local schools. I think it'd also be great to partner with our local nonprofits as we're reaching out to our different demographics. So for example, CHAC, the Community Health Awareness Council, Community Services Agency, the Day Workers Center. The city also just hired recently out of the city manager's office a language access coordinator, which which I think will be really helpful in terms of outreach to all our languages in our community. And so I think the city's aware, it's on the radar, and we're just trying to do the outreach and make those improvements. You know, something we could also do is on Open City Hall, add that as a question and kind of hear some feedback from our community on what programming they'd also like us to include.
Thank you. Question 11 for candidates 7, 8, and 9. As an elected official, how would you balance the needs of developers with the needs of the community?
Well, clearly the needs of the community are a top priority. Mountain View is a great place, and pretty much everyone is wanting to build here. So I think it's really important to keep in mind that the community is really important to every one of us in this room, and that our needs are of top priority, and that we can ask quite a bit of developers to make this an even better place to live and work.
Thank you. Mr. Rosenberg.
The needs of the developers, that's an interesting statement.
Yes.
The needs of they need land to build, to develop, and there seems to be a shrinking supply of certain types of development opportunities in Mountain View, like single-family homes with a front yard and a backyard. So the needs of the developer, the needs of Mountain View, the needs of our community are changing with respect to what we are going to demand from our developers. You know, I'm a big believer in property rights, and if a person or a company has the land and the land is zoned a certain way, it is not the city's responsibility to say you cannot do that. It is the city's responsibility to help make that into a project that the community benefits from. So I think looking at it from the lens of the developer first is backwards.
Thank you. Mr. Neal?
I have to agree with what Ken said there. Definitely, I think that that's backwards to look at it through the lens of the developer. But, you know, basically everybody who's a developer would want to build here, so it shouldn't be that hard to find developers that want to do what the community wants. And if they can't, then, you know, we can find another developer that will, or just, you know, or just deny the project. I mean, there's no reason to have, you know, someone that wants to develop a 10-story building, you know, right next door to a 2-story apartment complex, and I wouldn't permit something like that to happen. So that's how I feel about it.
All right, we are at our final question. How can candidates 1, 2, and 3, how can Mountain View better collaborate with other cities to address key Bay Area challenges, housing affordability, and public transit, for instance? Most peninsula cities seem disinterested in and have at times blocked efforts to solve regional problems. Mr. Eubanks.
Yes, that's been the history of this region, is lack of cooperation, and we're in the fix that we're in right now is a result of that to some degree, to a great degree, I should say. Housing affordability is basically a lack of supply, caused by a lack of supply. And there are, as you know, there are cities around us who are say, heavily influenced by, I'll say, no-growth factions within their citizenry. So we are dealing with governments that, in some cases, have been elected to not develop things. So it's going to be difficult. However, there are ways of doing it. We are, Mountain View, for example, in the school districts, 25% of our Mountain View kids go to Los Altos schools and vice versa. They have kids that come to Mountain View. So we need to cooperate with that city, and that's starting to happen. But it's going to be difficult. It needs to happen. And it's going to happen over time. But you definitely have political factors in other cities that are driving things the other way.
Thank you. Michelle Walter.
I agree with what Greg just said. And in addition to that, I think that we do have some areas where coordination is going well. I mean, for instance, there's the four-city Stevens Creek Trail process. That is a process that brings together Cupertino, Sunnyvale, Mountain View, and Los Altos. Thank you. And we need to add Palo Alto in there to get a complete bike picture. I've worked in the regional environmental community for many years, and I've been able to forge relationships with people in lots of different communities. And if you look on my website, you'll see that I'm endorsed by members of the city councils of our neighboring communities, Sunnyvale, Los Altos, Palo Alto. And one of my goals as a councilwoman will be to forge those relationships and make sure that we have regular conversations about just these issues. It's really important.
Thank you. Mr. Siegel.
Did I write that question?
Maybe.
As I mentioned in my opening remarks, we have an opportunity after this election to bring together representatives of the North County communities that have an excess of jobs over housing, as well as Menlo Park, which is technically in another county, but in a very similar situation, to transparently discuss these issues, open to the public, invite the big companies in, other interests, to have, again, a transparent discussion of the problems and how we might solve them. This would not be a group that would usurp the authority of each community, but like the body that we had making recommendations about Moffett Field in 1996, it would lay things out in a way that people would be expected at least to take back the ideas to their own councils, to their own communities, and see if we can work together. Nothing's been tried like this at this level for a long, long time.
Thank you very much. Now we will have the closing statements. A reminder that each candidate has 1 minute, and we will hear from them in reverse order of the opening statements. Mr. Neal.
So I was the first candidate to talk about the need for smart and balanced growth, to talk about affordable housing, to talk about parking and traffic issues, and to talk about saving the milk pail. And in the last few years, I've been dedicating myself to making sure that I have a thorough understanding of the issues that are affecting the city and the companies that exist within Mountain View. It hasn't been very easy to get up at 5 in the morning, to be in Berkeley by 7, and then to come back at 3, and then go to a city council meeting and be there until 11 o'clock at night, and then do it all over again the next day. But I do it because I care about the community. I care about what happens here. I care about the people here, and I care about making sure that Mountain View can continue to be the great city that I fell in love with when I moved here 8 years ago. I don't want to continue to see my friends have to move out because they can't afford the rent, and I don't want to continue to see small businesses close because they can't, because they also can't afford to stay here. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rosenberg.
Yeah, I'm a native of California. Before I moved up here to Silicon Valley, I was at Purdue University getting an MBA in information technology, which brought me here, where I met my wife, where we found a home. We had our first daughter, or we had a daughter about 15 years ago, and our son 13 years ago. About 13 years ago, I also switched careers to Morgan Stanley. Today, I manage about the same amount of money as the city budget of Mountain View. So I kind of have this idea that if people can trust me with their money for investment, you can trust me with your tax dollars. And I intend to keep Mountain View a AAA-rated city. But a side benefit of being involved in so many Mountain View-based organizations, as I described earlier, is that I have a very impressive list of Mountain View leaders endorsing my campaign, because I have relationships with them already. But at the end of the day, there's only one endorsement that I covet, yours. So this November, please vote for Ken.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure to be here. As I've gone door to door speaking with residents, I've had some really great conversations. And one thing a few of them have asked me is, how do I differentiate myself from other candidates? I am the candidate that is endorsed by all 3 of the outgoing city council members. They've all been doing this job for 8 years, and they know what it takes to be on council. I'm the founding president of one of the largest neighborhood associations in Mountain View, the Wagon Wheel Neighborhood Association, which is over 1,000 homes in the Wisman area. I'm in my 5th year right now on the city's Environmental Planning Commission. I've been chair and I've been vice chair, and I'm very current on the topics like land use, transportation, congestion, parking, a lot of the things we're talking about. I'm endorsed by a broad range of organizations, from the Sierra Club to the Chamber of Commerce to many other groups, and that says to me they know they can all work with me. And I've worked in high tech for over 25 years, a lot in the IT security industry, and I have a master's degree in business administration. I'm lucky number 8 on the ballot.
Thank you very much.
So I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for facilitating today's forum, as well as Google for hosting us today. Most of all, I'd like to thank you in the audience for attending. This November, we have an opportunity to elect 3 new people to City Council and represent 3 different perspectives. I hope you'll consider me one of them. I currently rent and would love to transition to be a homeowner someday here in the city. And as a third-generation Mountain View resident, professional career in public service on the city, county, and federal level, I'm ready to lead the city. We're facing changes in growth, affordability, transportation infrastructure, and economic development. I'm here to build a relationship with all of you, and I'm accessible to you. I know that I'm not Larry, but hopefully you would like to have coffee with me so that I can hear more about your perspective. Please visit ellenkamay.com to learn more about me and my endorsements. I am number 9 on the ballot. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Capriles.
As not only a resident of Mountain View for over 45 years, I actually had the privilege of working at Hewlett-Packard for a number of years. So I think both my volunteer activities and my professional background certainly prepare me for this. And I'm currently on the Environmental Planning Commission as well. So I think that I'm prepared to make this community what we would all like it to be, because I think we can build it better together. And I know that we have some great ideas of how we can achieve that and how we can do that. I think that we need to also look at how we're going to conserve water. I think that's very important. We all take it for granted, and often I think we need to take a step back. So I want you to take a look at that. I want your civic involvement. So when you vote for number 7, you're voting for community commitment, Capriles.
Thank you. Ms. Salem.
By nature, by education, and by profession, I'm an advocate. And my main priority is, will the residents of Mountain View benefit? That's going to be top of mind on any decision I make as your council member. We have a lot of important issues facing our city, and we need representatives that will speak for the residents, corporate and individual residents. We need someone who's going to put Mountain View first, outside of any other interest groups, and fight for what residents and the community wants. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Siegel.
I've been fighting to improve the quality of life and environment of Mountain View since I moved here in 1972. But I formed the Campaign for Balanced Mountain View in March because I understood at the time, I learned, that the City Council was planning on adding 3.4 million net new square feet of office space in North Bayshore and no housing. And that is the issue why I'm running for council, and it turns out that's the issue that divides the candidates. This is a good crop of people. They're dedicated, articulate, competent, but 5 of us support housing in North Bayshore and 4 of us don't. And I ask you not just to vote for me, but vote for the other candidates who want to help solve this problem. I didn't ask the outgoing council members for their support, even though some of them are personal friends, because they're the ones who voted against and kept us from having housing in North Bayshore.
Thank you. Ms. Showalter.
Well, thanks for coming, everyone, and thanks to the League of Women Voters and to Google. As Lenny said, this is a great group of candidates, and I know that it's going to be difficult for each and every one of us to figure out who the top 3 are. Somebody's shaking their head. Okay, maybe not you. But why me? Number 1, I'm a civil engineer. That makes me the best qualified candidate to evaluate the infrastructure issues that certainly come before City Council. Number 2, I have the most experience on the Environmental Planning Commission. I was turned out after 9 years, and that's generally considered to be sort of the school for Mountain View city government. I'm the only candidate who designed a neighborhood. I helped design the Wistman Station, and I'll apply those skills to the North Bayshore. I have strong regional experience. Multi-agency efforts like the South Bay Salt Pond are my strength. But don't take it for my word, look on my website, see who's endorsed me. It's a range of people. I'll be your voice for the environment on the City Council. Vote for me, please, number 1. Thank you.
Mr. Rosenberg.
Thank you.
No, you're not Mr. Rosenberg.
Oh, good.
You're
I get to
Mr.
do it.
That keeps us
Yeah,
even. All
He's
right.
got a little more hair than I do.
Oh, that's where we are. Okay. Mr. Unext. Thank
Okay.
you.
Hi. I grew up in Detroit in a lower middle class blue collar family. Did not have a lot of options. Did well in high school, and somehow I was admitted to West Point in 1968. Think about that for a second. I spent 10 years in active duty. I left the military with a Bronze Star, a Purple Heart, and 2 Ivy League degrees. I later used my veterans benefits to get another degree from New York University in public policy. And this world-class education propelled a 33-year career in aerospace, where I'm now able to self-fund this campaign that I'm running. I'm running for City Council and taking it as an opportunity to pay this debt I owe the American taxpayer who paid for this education, to pay it forward. And I respectfully request your vote in November. I'm number 5 on the ballot, square in the middle. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. I want to start by giving a round of applause to these candidates. They've probably become friends that they didn't know before. I would like to thank our volunteers on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Los Altos Mountain View and our co-sponsor, Google. We thank the candidates, of course. I want to thank you all for being such an attentive audience, asking good questions, and reminding you to vote now or on November 4th, depending if you have vote by mail. But the longer you wait, the more you learn about things that might happen in the next couple of weeks. If you are not yet registered to vote, did you move? Do you need to change your address? You can do that right here, right now, over against that wall. There are people with computers able to help you. You can now register to vote by mail. I looked it up by email. I looked it up the other day, not email, online. I looked it up the other day and saw the way that they do that is that you show your driver's license and they check your signature. Then your signature goes on file. And that's how it's done this way, because that was always the missing link. So please do be sure to register to vote. You have until October 20th if you know someone who isn't, someone in your household. That's the most important thing. You can go yourself online to the Secretary of State's website, sos.ca.gov, or you could Google California Secretary of State. Please enjoy the reception right here. Take the time to talk with these candidates. Ask them the answers to the questions they didn't get particularly, or the ones they gave. Thank you very much for coming. Good night.